Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We're here for our round 16 NRL preview show. We apologise we are slightly late. Let me welcome in the founder of TryPod, Winnie. How are you going, my friend?
Not too great, mate, after a 2-3 round 15, and I was quite triggered and I let it all out in the recap. We won the mixed matchup at least. I think it was, if you're having 100 on all them, it was actually a few dollars profit. But look, I don't want to speak too long-winded, but I just want to say a few things I think are true this year, all at the same time. I think I've gotten railed this year on some of my best bets with important players withdrawn. I don't think I'm getting close to half of the tight games where the bet is in the balance falling in our favor. And I think those things are truly exacerbating the record. But the truth is, that's not an excuse for bad results because my tipping hasn't been good enough. It's just a combination of bad tips and bad fortune. And I know people will say, well, a player gets sent off here, an awful referee call there, a player scratched here. It should all balance out. It certainly does in the long run. So I'll never say, oh, look at the TryPod's 10-year record, like we've been unlucky over the time. Like it all shakes out for sure. But in a certain season or in a period of season, it definitely is impactful. So when I talk about the things that are really grind my gears, it does hurt because the way I see it, when you lose a bet in a moment, it really takes two winning bets to kind of get you back to the place you would have been if that bet that you felt had a chance to win had just got up. And, I'm having a nightmare season. I'm having nightmarish things happen to me, but at the same time, I'm still sharing best bets that are beating the market the majority of the time, which is a measure of good tips, not the ultimate measure, not the one that I am going to hang my hat on. It's just like a similar rate to beating the market that we have in past years. And what that does mean to me is that my current losing rate is magnified, is exaggerated. That's why I don't expect that's going to continue, but I still take responsibility for it. And the fact that, again, coming back to the fact I haven't done a good enough job so far, which hurts me, but it is just part of the journey that I am going through at the moment.
Yeah, man, it's been a really tough year for the NRL in terms of tipping, betting, whatever it is people do. It's been tough to predict, which makes it always entertaining because certainly anything can happen every game. But on this show, our aim is to put some money in the punters' pockets. Hey, listen, mate, we got your reaction to the Blues team whilst we were live on Sunday. This is our first opportunity to get your reaction from the Maroons side. There's two changes in it. Hopgood and Selwyn Cobbo are out. Kurt Capel and Felice Carfusi come in. What are your thoughts on both?
So I didn't know Cobbo was playing with this injury because he was unreal in game one, but it might explain why he was less than stellar Friday night for Brisbane. And Hopgood we knew was injured. We said Carfusi would come in. That makes sense. But as for Cobbo, you might think, well, what did Billy Slater say? Had to replace an outside back in 4 of 6, make that 5 of 7. So who would the outside back be that you'd put on the bench? I could guess maybe Gagai, but is he less of a strike weapon? Capewell has filled in at centre in successful Origin victories before, and it's more conventional to cover your back line with a versatile back rower. So it wasn't overly surprising to me either. Anything from you?
Yeah, I think for me, well, I just want to understand exactly, is Cobbo injured or is he out? Because to Fox Sports, Billy Slater said he's injured. And then to Channel 9, he said he's also got some things he needs to work on in his game. So to me, it indicates that the injury is minor enough that he probably could have played. And if that is the case, then I just go back to Billy Slater's comments before game one where he said, regardless of whether someone gets injured or not, we have a game plan on how we want to use Selwyn Cobbo. So what I'm interested in is, one, why did Dane Gagai not fill that void? He is the most logical person in the Maroons extended bench. And two, does that fundamentally change the way they're going to use Kurt Capewell in this game and use him in that role they were going to use Selwyn and Cobbo? Now, if that is the case, I don't like it. I think that Capewell and Cobbo could not be different players, especially as Kurt Capewell ages in the game. But I'm interested mainly when he was Billy Slater just kind of bluffing, oh yeah, we've got a plan for Cobbo, and he was there for depth all along, or was there, has something changed? Does he look at game one and say, you know what, I've got to admit, they were down to 12 men and their forwards were getting on top of us. They were pressuring us. With Mitchell Moses in there, they might be able to score points. We need an extra forward on the bench. I think that's probably the most logical, but that's really my only thoughts about the team list. Apart from that, it's pretty
and that's the thing. We don't know if they had a true game plan. It's actually okay to have a back on your bench just purely as cover and trust everyone else can play big minutes. But of course, they're going to say they've got a plan because they want to worry New South Wales. And you could swap Gagai in there, but Gagai is not quite Selwyn Cobbo at this point in his career. the other thing that I'm super interested in, which Ryan comments, is the market moves for Origin. So I've asked Tristan to talk about that because I've never really seen anything like it. This somewhat unexplained massive shift in the market where New South Wales was $2.50 to win game 2 much of last week on the weekend. Right now, they're picking for game 2, which we will preview next week. I'll put you on the spot. I think we want to aim for Monday, if that works for you, Clarky, like we did game 1. But Tristan's going to have a word on that. But I think we're already just over 5 minutes. People want my best bets. I know some people in the comments will say they do, so they can back the other side.
Well, mate, let's go to it. Best bets. Let's get it underway, mate. What have you got for us this week?
Let's be really quick. I will take the Dolphins plus 6.5 at $1.90 on 365 lads. Ned's actually $1.91. I just think that line's too high for a Finns side that has good cover for the Origin players that are out at home. Is the real deal this season. I know Pappy's back for the Storm, but Melbourne's still missing a couple of Origin reps as well as an injured Munster. I'm going to reload on the Warriors against your Titans, a minus 5.5 at $1.90 on better. And for me, the Warriors have got a couple of outs, but RTS comes back. They're not as Origin affected. The Titans not only lose Mo to Origin, but Cleese Haas. And I just feel like the Warriors are still a side that believes they absolutely should be playing finals. The Titans are a team that could be stuck in a little bit of a rut now after 2 massively subpar performances. I'm going to play Souths minus 4.5 at $1.81 on the Sportsbet Pick Your Own line. It's $1.98 minus 6.5, but to get through 6, I would buy that for under 20 cents because I've got a South side that's just got all the momentum. I've got a Manly side that is a mash unit, plus obviously several important players for Origin. But you remember like Turbo, Lockie Croker are still out. Carl Lawton is the halfback for this Manly side. So as brave as they were, and the fact that Cam Murray and Mitchell are out for South, I think South still have too much for Manly to deal with. And then I am taking the Raiders minus 3.5 at $1.82 on Dabble because I think they can bounce back. They've still got more experience and more ability, a stronger forward pack than the Tigers, who got that brave win. But is that now an exhale spot for West? I think a lot of the things I criticised West about the last couple of weeks are still true, despite the fact that they did get that win.
Mate, I will give you, I like those, and I'll add to your best bets with one of my own this week. We'll introduce a bit of a new segment, guys, called Clarky's Collect, where I'll put one bet out there each week just to start nice and slow, as you guys aren't familiar with me giving out any punting advice on this show. So we'll start it off nice and slow. My Clarky's Collect for this week, Winnie, this will kind of give away how I'm seeing some of the games, but I'll go into more detail as we go game by game. I'm going Warriors and Raiders head-to-head, and then my final leg's going to be the Bulldogs, which I got at plus 9.5. I believe that line has moved, so you might have to use pick your own line, but that is around $4.40. And I think it's still
8.5 if it's not 9.5. It's basically the same thing. So we didn't talk, but that's good to know. You're on Raiders and Warriors and I'm laying the short line with both of those. You talked to me about, giving your favorite play of the week. And we said, like, we're a punting show. I think people won't mind it. You share it with your reasoning and you can give your reasoning in the games. And if we're going to share anything official, we're going to track it too. So we're at the halfway point in the season. So it will be interesting to see how Clarky goes between now and, say, finals, how profitable his tip can be or not profitable. It's always great when you have wins and you can show everybody. But we will show you our results, even if they're bad as they have been this year. So shall I roll straight into Tristan Merlehan's clip?
Absolutely.
He's going to talk about the market moves for this weekend ahead of round 16, but also I really wanted to hear an anatomy of this Origin market.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport, and we've got Origin not far away. It's just over a week away now. We have to look at our normal round 16 moves. Obviously it's a little bit of a tricky round at price where there's a few new players into the team. So there has been a little bit of movement since we released the markets on Monday. The Warriors have gone from 4.5 out to 6.5. The poor old Titans, they just couldn't put away the Tigers last weekend, which was pretty frustrating, and it'll be interesting how they go. There's going to be a sold-out crowd at Seabus, I believe, but there'll probably be more Warriors fans there than Titans, but we'll see how that game ends up. The other game that's seen a big move has been the Bunnies, gone from -3.5 out to -6.5. That's despite Latrell getting picked, which I think was expected. Obviously, a few Manly players are out though, so that's seen that big move. Speaking of big moves, there's been an absolute massive move for the New South Wales side in Origin. We opened this market up at 4.5 when the market opened, pretty much straight after round one, game one, should I say. From there, we went from 4.5 into 3.5. We laid that the morning after game one. Obviously, there was some customers buoyed by the fact that New South Wales fought on pretty well, despite going down one player for about 60 odd minutes of that game. The market then sat at 3.5 for a long period of time, and then there's been a really strong push since the teams were announced yesterday, particularly, where it went from 3.5 into 2.5 into 2 flat, and then to pick him, and all that happened at around about 8 o'clock yesterday morning. So, the teams are pretty much as expected. So it was surprising, the push. Whether that means the market maybe was set a little bit too high to begin with. Has it overreacted a touch? I don't know. New South Wales have obviously got a pretty strong side. I think everyone expected them to have a pretty strong side. They were slight underdogs there at home, so it's interesting that they go into this game now as basically Pickham in a Pickham match. Now it's at a neutral venue. So I think the push was probably warranted. Maybe, as I said, the line was too high to begin with, but I do feel maybe it's overreacted a touch now. And as a Queenslander, it's getting to that point where we might go into this game underdogs despite being 1-0 up and coming off a 30-point win, which probably isn't the worst place to be. So good luck over this weekend if you're having a bet. We'll touch base before Origin next week, and of course, gamble responsibly.
Thank you very much to Tristan for that clip. Yeah, it would shock me actually if the Maroons went in as underdogs. Underdogs. That would be surprising based on what we saw in game one. But it was a bit of a strange contest with 13 versus 12. I can see you've typed those best bets into the comments now, so we'll bring those up on screen so people can see them as well. And we'll move into our game-by-game coverage. Game one is at Friday, 8 p.m, where the Dolphins host the Storm. We're at Suncorp Stadium, and the line is set at -4.5 in the Storm favour. That was prior to team list. It's since shifted out to around 5.5 in most places. Dolphins
6.5.
6.5, as high as 6.5.
Yep.
There you go, guys. Trey Fuller is in. Jesse Bromwich is back, and Tavita Pangai Jr. will make his debut for the Dolphins. For the Storm, Ryan Pappenhausen returns at fullback. That pushes Suafa'alongo to the wing. Will Warbrick returns, and Bronson Garlick comes in for Harry Grant. Now, these sides have only met once before winning. It was also at Suncorp Stadium, with the Storm walking away as 8-point winners. What do you think? Do you think this is a repeat spot or a revenge spot here for the Dolphins?
Well, the Finns are as good as they've ever been. They're a team, especially off the back of last week, that believes they can play finals, and why not even push for top four? Went and beat a top four side on their own turf. You lose the hammer, they wouldn't have won last week without. But we've said before, Fuller, what a great deputy he is, and really missed him in the final 20 minutes and extra time against the Raiders, which was the last time the Finns played prior to round 15, and it was also an Origin-affected week. And the Finns disappointed. They should have got the job done at home to Canberra, and they find themselves at home again, albeit it's at Suncorp, where you have to admit Melbourne has a sensational record. Kaufusi is a loss, but considering he even started at prop last week, Bromwich coming in covers that pretty well, and TPJ will debut and be a spark plug off the bench. And I just come back to the fact that this Finn side should be inspired. That gives you all the belief in the world. If you can go and get a win like that, even when Cronulla totally flipped the game on its head. And I thought particularly, although there was a try scored right at the death, that the ability to hang on and defend in what was such a high-scoring game, keep Cronulla at bay, I think it's something that the Finns can take a lot out of. Now, you can say similar for Melbourne, that also got like such an impressive victory on a road trip. But I come back to the, I suppose, intangibles, where Melbourne's on the shorter backup after a trip to New Zealand. The Finns only had to go to Sydney and did play Thursday night, so get the full turnaround. Melbourne, we know no Munster. They lose their captain, Grant. Coates is out. Pappy may not have been expected back this week. So that's why the line was 4.5 before teamless and is now 6.5. And that does strengthen the Storm back line, and I think adds more playmaking too. And I don't want to take away from Melbourne because they're down 14-0 New Zealand. They gave no hope. They caught some breaks, but you've got to be good enough to capitalise on those. It just comes back to me, like what it comes back to for me is that the line seems a bit too high. Like to have the Finns at home, 6.5 underdog, means you're telling me Melbourne's like 8 or more points better without the Origin players. I think it'll be closer than that.
Yeah, here's how I break this one down. I look at the Storm, and they are typically really strong at Suncorp Stadium. And Jerome Hughes has been great this year with the rest of their spine missing at patches. Now, he's the only starter in this Storm spine that I can trust is at full fitness that would be there usually. Pappenhausen first game back. I expect maybe a few cobwebs. Harry Grant in Origin, Munster out injured. And the Storm have won 9 of their last 10 games that Jerome Hughes has played in. So I think that really does capture just how important he will be to victory for this Storm side, just like he was last week against New Zealand. And I'm always wary of underestimating the Storm. I did it last week when I was confident on the Warriors, so I was extra wary to do it 2 weeks in a row. But I just feel the Dolphins here at the line is my play. They've only averaged 1 less point per game in scoring, and they're only conceding 2 more points per game than the Storm. So across this season, the difference between these sides is 3 points per game. That's close enough when you tie in a home advantage there for the Dolphins as well. For the Dolphins, they've scored 20 or more in their last 6 NRL games. If that trend can continue for a 7th game, and let's say we get an extra converted tries buffer, I can see the Dolphins defending 26 points against a Storm side that will be a little bit clunky. You know, Jerome Hughes isn't going to be as clean getting the ball from dummy half from someone like Bronson Garlick as if it was Harry Grant. So there'll be a little bit of change in that Storm side. Without their regular spine here, and I'm talking about the Melbourne Storm, I actually expect this to be a contest where both sides are looking to complete at a high percentage rate, play smart footy through their kicking game, and keep it relatively simple. And the Dolphins do complete at 5% higher than the Storm on average this season. And Isaiah Katoa, their main kicker, averages 495 metres kicked to Jerome Hughes' 350. So when you tie that all together, I actually think the Dolphins can come out on top here, but I'll play it safe, and my tip is Dolphins at the line in this one.
You talk about that tactic, that strategy. That's exactly the type of game and game plan that the Dolphins tried to deploy down in Cronulla. The problem was they started too well. They played perfect, and Cronulla missed the jump, and they built a lead. They didn't anticipate scoring 4 tries in like a 15-minute period, but then it made it a different game, which then made Cronulla a lot more dangerous once Cronulla did wake up. And that's what I get back to, that after the hammer try that gave the Finns the belief and stopped the bleeding, it finally turned into that arm wrestle for the final 20, and they showed me a lot of toughness in those moments, and I will need to replicate that, of course, against the ladder leading Storm. But that is the type of game I could foresee. And, well, Nicole actually has a try scorer in this game, but it's in favour of my best bet side as well. Let's have a listen.
Finally, I can do one of these with a bit of confidence. So obviously, tipped Hamole on the pod last weekend. He got up, he scored on Sunday. It was our best round of the season by far. Tipped Plath at 81's first try scorer on Thursday. Cook first try scorer at 41s, and then Little first, second, or third try at 17s on the Sunday as well. So absolute monster weekend, and our premium stuff was even better. So as always, guys, Google Wiki Linktree, our Discord community just cracked 4,500. Our Origin try scorer tips, all our content, previews, odds comparison tools, all that stuff is free. Herbie Farnworth, guys, for this weekend, only 5 games, but he is 350 on 365, anytime try scorer. Left centre up against the right side, which will look defensively for the Storm. It's actually going to be full strength, but Herbie's been looking incredible. $3.50 anytime try scorer, noticeably better than other bookies that I've seen early on a Tuesday. So good luck, punt responsibly. Cannot wait for Origin next week, but for now, we've got 5 games of NRL to look forward to. Good luck, guys.
Awesome stuff there from Nicole. Thank you very much for sending that in. And hey, I'm just going to throw it out there. A win is a win in punting, but the NRL actually did come out today and said Hamole's try shouldn't have been a try because they admitted Ben Trbojevic did stop in the line. So we would have got fortunate with that.
Did they say anything about the Lomax try? I missed honestly.
No, they didn't say anything about it, which I thought was crazy.
Oh, well, what else is new? Try against the best bet that we get an apology for on Monday. And look, just back to touch on Nicole's tip there, I've got to say, like, Herbie Farnworth is unreal. I was thinking about if you were picking like a World 13 or a World 17, if the aliens came and they said, look, we're going to destroy your planet unless you can beat us with your best rugby league team. So we had to put a team together to defend the planet Earth. I mean, Stephen Crichton's your right centre. But who's your left centre? I think arguably it's Herbie Farnworth. And I guess Latrell Mitchell if he dominates the stage in Melbourne. But Farnworth is going so well. So even though the hammer is out, there's another superstar that, that was the perfect example last week. And sorry to keep talking about it, but it's such an amazing moment that I can't stop talking about it. But great players, superstar players, can turn the tide in games. And they're the players you look to when it's gone against you. And invariably against tough sides like Melbourne, you're going to be up against it. And a little bit like Newcastle, we're not going to cover against Penrith on Sunday. And then Bradman Best just kind of burst the game open. So I'm loving everything that Herbie's doing, one of the buys of the season.
Yeah, great question. Herbie's been in great form, but if there was a laser being pointed at the earth with aliens, I'd probably have to go Andre Iguodala. Have you seen that clip before?
That's best shooter, right, over Steph Curry.
Yes,
that's crazy. A bit of a deep cut. But anyway, shout out to the 3 people watching who got that reference.
Yep, shout out to any NBA fans that would have got that one. Let's move on to game 2. It's at Saturday, 3 p.m. The Titans host the Warriors, or it might as well be the other way around. But we are at Cbus Super Stadium, and the line is set at, it was set at -6.5 Warriors before team lists. That's now shifted to -6.5 there. For the Warriors, they do welcome back Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at centre. No Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, he's out suspended, so Edward Cossey is the wing, and Dylan Walker shifts to the back row, showing his versatility. For the Titans, Dave Fafita is back, Cleese Hart is out injured, Keenan Palacia starts, and Tino's little brother, Isaac Fa'asuamaleaui, plays his first game in the NRL of 2024. Now, the Titans did cause a massive upset last time these two sides met in New Zealand, and I still can't believe it because I can't even get the words out of my mouth. But since that point, mate, they have unfortunately fallen off a cliff in the past fortnight. Can you see any sort of upset on the cards here? Because even as a Titans fan, I can't.
Well, no, you're tipping them in your Clarkies Collect, the Warriors, that is, against your Titans. And I'm tipping the Warriors -5.5 as my best bet. And I think the fact that the Titans upsetting New Zealand on Anzac Day was a real low point for the Warriors. They were like 14-point favourites on the day. And I believe that this is a good opportunity for revenge. And, AJ Brimson from memory was outstanding that day. He's not here. Jolliffe is out. Cleese Haas, of course, Fodawaker. Now, to be fair, the Warriors aren't as strong in this one as they have been in the last couple of weeks. You got Berry and Watene-Zelezniak injured. You also, as a Warriors squad, did not expect to lose any Origin players. Realistically, like Barnett was in the wider Blues squad, but there wasn't really an expectation he would get in there because there's others like Cam Murray that have emerged anyway. But Barnett is the 18th man for New South Wales, right? So as it stands, you can double check that, but as it stands, that means he does miss on Saturday, which is a bit of a head scratcher. We both said, like, if Burton was the correct choice for 18th man in game 1, why wouldn't he be for game 2? And I'd much rather have a half than a specialist. So that's a weird one. Look, as I understand it, and I'm still tipping Warriors -5.5. Are you nodding there, Clarkie? Barnett will be out.
He is the 18th man.
And Capewell. Like, that was a bit of a surprise because we didn't know that Cobbo would be dropped through to, injury/form, however Billy wants to explain it. But with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is a big in, and the fact that the Warriors have had so many troops come back on deck in the last couple of games or the last couple of weeks, they've got more than enough to cover it. I know Fafita's clearly a handy in, and it would just be typical that he would be scratched out of the blue when I'm on the Titans a week ago and will come back in and probably play one of the best games of his career and lead the Titans to a victory. There's other shining lights in this Titans team. Like Keanu Kinney's performance gets totally overshadowed. 300 plus meters. He was phenomenal. And, Foran and Campbell are developing in the halves. They've had their moments. And I still maintain on a different day, the Titans could have finished off a few more of those breaks. They could have won handily. It's just that I don't see New Zealand offering nearly as many openings as were presented by Wes. So I think that the Titans will struggle a lot more so in attack. And against a quality side like New Zealand with Johnson and Tamari Martin in the halves, like C&K, Egan, right, all the playmaking there, you're going to see a game maybe more similar to the Souths clash a fortnight ago, which was also at the Gold Coast. The difference is, as Tristan said, it's a sellout, but that's actually a home game for New Zealand. There's that many Kiwis that get out in force. So if anything, home field is diminished for the designated home side. These are all the reasons why, with more experience across the spine and a stronger pack, I do think that this New Zealand side that still believes we're a finals force will come in and take care of business, as opposed to a Titans team that languishes bottom. They're better than that, but they're not going to be consistently good every week. They're going to have their ups and downs, that's for sure. And less than full strength, I'm not confident that the Titans bounce back from the disappointment. Wary of going against you of what might be your low point in the season. That's not typically what I want to do. But I suppose I'm playing the 5.5, which was the last on the board at better, before it goes any further.
Yeah, man, for what it's worth, like I will call it how I see it, even though I'm a Titans fan, same as you. I haven't always done that on this show. You know, last year I was always tipping the Titans, but I'm going to call it as I see it, like we spoke about last year. And when these two sides met on Anzac Day, it was the Warriors were in a tough spot. It was the third game of what turned out to be a 5-game stretch where they didn't win one game. They had one draw in there against Manly. They were still favourites against the Titans in that contest. This time around, their recent 5 includes 3 wins, and that's over some great sides like the Dolphins and the Panthers. It's the Titans who are now in the top spot. They also lose their captain, well, not their captain, their co-captain and star forward in Moeki Fotuaika to Origin. This is a Warriors side that in New Zealand, last time they met, although they were in a tough spot, they still managed to put 24 points on the Titans. I think the Titans are in a tougher spot now. They're not as strong defensively. And I don't think this Titans side has 24 points in them at all. I see the Warriors scoring more than 24, and I don't see the Titans being able to respond there. And my primary concern actually comes from the mental side of football. And where does Des Hasler go for motivation with this team? You know, nothing has gone right this year. Tino out injured for the season. Next best forward, Jamin Jolliffe. He goes and gets injured long term. I just can't see how he mentally gets them up for this game for a performance with everything that's gone against them and the fact they now sit in last place on the ladder. Whereas Andrew Webster for the Warriors, all he has to do is remind them of the game earlier this year. He can also remind them the Titans have won 4 of their last 5 against the Warriors. The only loss in that bunch was a game where Fotuaika was sent off early as well. The Warriors have lost 3 of their last 4 away games. These are all stats that, whilst they do technically go against the Warriors, I think they're actually motivating factors for a side that believes they are finals bound. So I think Andrew Webster can really motivate his side here and get them up. And again, I just go back to what can Des Hasler possibly say to convince this Titans side that they need to go out there and fight tooth and nail here. The Titans have only won 1 of their 6 games at Seabus this year, and it might as well be a Warriors home game, as you said. It's sold out. They will outnumber the Titans fans. They will outnumber us. I can absolutely, I'd bet on that. I'm very confident they will outnumber us. And I know the club is already putting in measures such as not announcing their team before kickoff and not allowing them to have any drums or anything like that in the stadium because they already know it's essentially a home game for them. All things considered there, I got to go Warriors, man, at the line.
You're not going to be able to bet on more Warriors fans than Titans because you're not even going to get $1.01. And just to correct what I said I'm playing New Zealand minus $5.5, $1.90, the last one. It is 6.5 in some places. I think Toppy's gone to 6.5, but that wasn't correct what I said. Like it's still 4.5 on 365. It's still 5.5 on Sportsbet. So it's split, it's straddling the 6, which obviously can be a key margin of victory. It is a little bit more juiced in a couple of those spots. Well, it's juiced either way to the plus above 6 and to the minus below 6 everywhere except better, which was the $1.90, my best bet.
There we go. Let's move on to game 3. We're at Saturday, 5:30 p.m, where the Roosters host the Doggies. We're at Industry Group Stadium here in Gosford, and the line was set at minus 9.5 for the Roosters prior to team lists. It's now shifted to around 8.5 in most places. For the Doggies, they welcome back Jacob Kiraz at centre. Jarrell Skelton will make his first appearance on the wing. Kurt Mann is out. Jake Turpin and Farmer Silly join their bench. For the Roosters, Brandon Smith returns there at hooker. Terrell May starts. Dominic Young's back on the wing. That moves Ponga to the centres. Tupanua and Swea Wong join their bench. All right, winning. In this one, it is 5th versus 6th, and we're in round 16. I don't think too many people would have been tipping. We'd say that these sides would be next to each other on the ladder at this stage of the season. They did meet earlier this year. I'm not sure how much we can take out of the Doggies' 30 to 26-point victory there. Do you think the Roosters go 2-0 over? Sorry, do you think their sides go 1-1 this year in the regular season?
More than likely. I don't know what we can learn from the first encounter, but it's fun to talk about because it was a wild game. Unfortunately, I was on the Roosters for a best bet, and 20 minutes in, I knew I probably wasn't going to win that one because it was 18-0 Dogs, and Dom Young had been sent off. And so the Roosters played the remaining hour 13 versus 12, except for a 10-minute period where I think Bradley was sin bin, and it was 13 versus 11. So, of course, the Dogs won by 50 points, right? No, you said the score was 30 to 26. The Roosters roared back and could have won. What a weird one that was. But the Doggies are making a habit of winning these unexpected games and being able to win the tight ones as well. And the Dogs only lose one Origin player, right? Stephen Crichton, who I don't think would probably that, of all the takeaways of that really enthralling King's birthday game against Para, that was one that I could have spoken about, like what a superstar Crichton is. I'm starting to think, I just talked about, the World 13 or whatever. Are there many players in the whole game that are better than Crichton right now? I'm kind of putting Crichton on his game is like Reece Walsh at his best. Like right now, it's just about the most terrifying player. So huge loss. What else is a huge loss though is Jacob Preston too, who's not an Origin rep but got injured last week. The Roosters do lose 4 Origin players, of course, but some good inclusions coming in. You got Brandon Smith, you got Dom Young's back. One of our show favourites, Sia Wong, joins the bench. I look at the Dogs and I'm saying, all right, Burton's not 18th man for New South Wales is a massive boost, and they've been so much better since they've finally selected Sexton at 7. Who could have thought it? However, the Roosters just have this sense to me that they've drawn a line in the sand. They've had their bye, and it's kind of go time. You've got Teddy in his first club game during a rep weekend or a rep week in like 7 or 8 years. Kieran Walker going just as well as the Dogs halves, and I think can challenge the stellar Canterbury defence. Brandon Smith, the cheese, is going to come in with a point to prove. Like Watson, somewhat unexpectedly picked for Origin, but Smith was cooling his heels this weekend, so he's going to come in and should have a massive game. And I still think behind the Roosters pack, which is clearly stronger and deeper. I talked about Preston being a great player. Kickout remains out injured. So I knew that the Roosters would have to be a significant favourite. I thought the line would be like 7.5, to be honest. The Dogs still have a chance in this one, and I will lean to them at 8.5, but I wasn't going to play it because there's lots of reasons to me as to why the Roosters will even the ledger for 2024.
I'm a bit more confident than you on the Doggies in this one. That's why I put them in the what do we call it? Clarkie's Collect. And both of these sides are coming off wins over the Eels, where they both conceded exactly 18 points to Para. Of course, in between that, the Bulldogs have had a bye. Now, the Roosters aren't at their traditional home ground here. They take this one to Gosford, where they have a less than 50% winning rate. They've actually won 9 of 19 attempts. That favours the Doggies. They have a 64% win rate in Gosford with 7 from 11 there. For me, this is a great matchup of a great attacking side and a great defensive side. So I'm looking at who can impose their game plan, and that leads me to the Bulldogs. I think that they have been playing to their strength pretty consistently this year. Now, the Roosters haven't missed the mark too much. It's just I think the Dogs have been a little bit more consistent with the strength of their defense across the season to this point. These sides also met in Gosford last year, around this time on the ladder. It was round 14. In that game, the Roosters were the ones coming off the bye, and the Bulldogs were in a much worse spot, and they only beat the Doggies by 1 point. I think this year the Bulldogs are a much stronger side. I think they're much more settled without too many losses like the Roosters have in Origin. I expect them to defend well, and that will pressure the Roosters. The Roosters are a side that ever since they went back-to-back and won those 2 premierships, they are right up there in top 4 for errors conceded of any team across the league. I'm not quite sure where they sit this year, but I would assume it's pretty high as well. So if the Bulldogs can defend well, I think they can pressure the Roosters, make them force some errors rather, And for that reason, I'm going to tip doggies at the line in this one. I think even if they don't win, I don't see it being a total blowout to the Roosters in this game.
And it's always fascinating to discuss how the market has moved, especially around Origin. Ryan makes the comment there, like feels he's missed the value of 12.5 about the Roosters. But I'm presuming that's the look ahead line. Let us know when that was available, Ryan. But if the line a week ago was Roosters minus 12.5, I thought Burton would definitely be in the New South Wales team. And if not, it would retain his spot at 18th man. I wasn't thinking that they'd let him off the hook or they'd give the Dogs any release. So I thought this would be a Burtonless Bulldogs. And you probably didn't see, the selection of Connor Watson, for example, for the Roosters. So you kind of, right there, you take those couple of players. It's understandable why the line shifts. So unless you could still get a 12.5 when you knew Burton was going to be playing, it's all relative, kind of like what the market, what the expectations were that were the forces on that market.
And I think that's the case for this next game. That's game 4. It's Saturday, 7:35 p.m. Rabbitohs host the Seagulls at Accor Stadium. And the line was set at minus 4.5 against the Bunnies. Once team list came out, that shifted to 7.5 against the Bunnies. And I think that's because not many people expected Jai Gray back from injury as a direct replacement there for Latrell. Liam LeBlanc is also named for his NRL debut. For Manly, I don't think many people saw this either. Carl Lawton goes to halfback to replace Daly Cherry Evans. Aaron Schott comes into the centres for his club debut. It's a completely new look forward pack. It would take me too long to go through it. But one point that did interest me was Fijian international Caleb Navale, who played really well in the Pacific Championship last year. He comes in for his NRL debut. Winnie, we have a rematch from Las Vegas. This time it's in beautiful Sydney. The Sea Eagles won that game as underdogs, and they're underdogs here again, but you've got the Bunnies winning.
And again, I usually like the team that lost the first time around, so revenge hopefully could be served here too. I'm looking like the line hasn't moved. My best bet's not moving the market, but I appreciate that. Not many people jumping on. I don't want anyone to blindly. And I am a bit surprised. Like, you've given an explanation there that it's because Jai Gray is back, but this is my thinking that the 4.5 that's available about Souths this morning, you knew DCE, Gerbo, Olakuatu all playing for New South Wales. You knew Garrick would have to be stood down for the HIA, Paseka with the injuries.
Yes,
you knew all these guys would be out for Manly, and you knew Latrell and Cam Murray got picked for South Sydney. So once the team list got named, there's no surprises in there to me. It's more probably just the realization sunk into people that, like, wow, that's a Manly team that looks mighty thin. And I made the point at the top, like, you take out 5 really important players, but then you remember that, like, Lockie Croker, Tom Trbojevic also are out. Whereas Souths, Latrell and Cam Murray are so influential, but they haven't really had Cam Murray for a couple of months. He only came in off the bench. And Jai Gray, it's exciting to see get another opportunity. Like, clearly you can't replace Latrell, but that's factored into this line. I still think Souths will have too much for Manly to handle. Like, the halves are working, Whiten and Walker. The Cookie is revitalized behind this pack with a bit of go forward. I feel like Arrow has made a huge difference since he's come back. Keon is in better form there. And this South side has won 3 straight weeks. We've been on them for a best bet all 3, and I feel like they have snuck under the radar. And I've seen comments come through of people. I mean, Nicole said something that where he would have been ridiculed 3 weeks ago. He said he had a sneaky bet on the Bunnies at like 400 to 1 to win the premiership. Like, it's not going to seem that crazy. If they keep on chalking up wins like this one, then it becomes 4 in a row, right? And then suddenly you're in the finals mix again. And you got, like, say, a fully fit Cam Murray. What if, like, Campbell Graham comes back in? They're not thinking that their season's over. They have benefited from the lack of expectations because everyone else had written Souths off. But I think South Sydney's really played themselves into the best form that they've had in over 12 months' time. I'm going to just jump on that real momentum. And again, I was just checking, and maybe a 2 cent move. It's $1.79 still, like the -4.5 on Sportsbet. So although it has moved, the juice is still with the plus with Manly in several places for the 6.5. And again, I think I explained at the top, but to win on a margin of 6 instead of lose, which is what happens when you lay -4.5 instead of 6.5, I think is worth 20 cents. So if you can get that alt line at less than 20 cents lower, I would advise going about it that way. But I'm not going to be surprised at all if Souths win it by well beyond 4 points either.
And I'll be honest, I was really close to adding the Rabbitohs against the line as my final leg for Clarkie's Collect. I just leaned with the Bulldogs at the last second, but I did regret that one once I saw Jai Gray was back. But by that stage, the market had already adjusted and moved to that 7.5. But I'm feeling Rabbitohs here. My main reason is I'm getting a Manly side with no DCE, which is their chief playmaker, Olakuatu, which is their main attacking weapon, and Jake Trbojevic, who's their best defensive player, and that's a huge chunk out of their middle. It's a very patchy Manly side, whereas the Rabbitohs, I've seen them this year without Latrell. I've seen them this year without Murray. It wasn't great, but there's not so much of an adjustment period where I think Manly will genuinely realize in the first 15 minutes of this game, what is going on? I don't know what the person next to me is doing defensively. We've only had 3 training sessions with this makeup in defense, and that will allow the Rabbitohs with players like Cody Walker to take full advantage. Now, the Rabbitohs have won 7 of their last 8 against the Seagulls. That's 7 out of 7 if you only include games in Australia. They haven't lost 2 in a row to Manly since 2010. And when we look at this venue specifically being a core, Manly have not beaten the Rabbitohs here since 2013. So they are all decade-standing stats there, very heavily in the Bunnies' favour. I like the Bunnies. I think they've got too much attack in their game. And I just think Manly will not only look disjointed in attack, but also defence. And that really opens the door for players like Cody Walker, Jai Gray, Jack Whiten that have this X factor where they can score. Rabbitohs at the line is my tip in that one.
And as I often say, I really don't read into these long stats too much because teams change so much. And I don't really see a fundamental reason why, other than Souths have probably been better for the last decade. Generally, Manly's had their moments, but I do recall when Manly made a prelim and Souths got the better of them. That was 2021. That's probably included among those. But look, I haven't had a good read on several teams this year, and Manly's been a team that's got the better of me a couple of times, including on the weekend. Like, I still don't really know how Manly won that game. And you can say that losing important players mid-game is actually worse than losing them with a week to prepare. But it's still, as you say, new combinations, and the guys that are often the ones rescuing them out of a hole, and more than anyone, DCE, you're going to look to your 7, you're going to see Carl Lawton there. I'll play Souths, even if the public would probably swing and be on Souths with me. Some other good comments there, like Ryan says, who's going to kick goals? No DC, and DCE's not a good kicker, but obviously no Garrick as well. And Ryan says he got 250 to 1 to make the GF, so that's like equivalent of 500 to win the comp, and $21 to make top 8. Like, these are the kind of cheeky bets that when you play them, it's still not likely it's going to happen, but you give yourself a chance. We've seen teams that can really swing a season around, after the 1/3 or halfway point. It's way too early to just give up. Souths have got too much talent, and geez, you'd love to have those kind of tickets in your pocket. So well done, Ryan, and good luck.
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys, when they won their inaugural premiership, lost their first 3 games, and then lost third one 40-0 to the Broncos before responding with an 11-game win streak. So it can certainly be done, and it has been done in the past.
And that Cowboys team was down 7 to the Storm with like 5 minutes to go in the 4th game as well, before a try and a JT field goal and then another field goal in extra time. And these tight moments, can really change it, because if that Cowboys team had lost 4 in a row, you just don't know if they would have actually ever regrouped and made that run for that unreal premiership in 2015.
Exactly right. And it does seem like this Rabbitohs group have kind of regrouped and got their mojo.
And I'm not saying, by the way, of course, I'm not saying like Souths are going to win the comp or anything like that, but the upside is there. and the signs are so much more positive than what they were a couple of months ago. This is a team that we spoke every single week about how they were defying mathematics and failing to cover the spread, despite the fact the spread's meant to keep up. And it was 16 or 17 in a row losses against the spread, I think. But now they've quietly won 4 in a row against the spread. And remember, I was copying it a lot of why would you play a garbage team like Souths? And I only played them once this year where we lost, and that was the Dragons game. And I was 1 week too early because they actually have covered for a month straight since then. But at least, as I said, have been on the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and as Patrick from Instagram points out, the Knights did do it last year as well. They were the side that made the run last year.
Perfect example too. Totally written off, but it made sense too because Ponga came back in. Other players, and they were never as far away as they looked. Newcastle, they were blowing games they should have won, and they did turn it on and really charged into the finals. And it would not shock me if someone like North Queensland, New Zealand, South Sydney, these teams could all be good candidates to do something similar this year.
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine if Latrell Mitchell has a big game in game 2 and the Blues won an upset Origin series, the amount of confidence that would give him at fullback. And when we think about that Knights run last year, really it was the elite form of Kalen Ponga at the back that really drove that team forward. So Latrell Mitchell a chance to replicate that this year. Final game of this condensed round where it's Sunday, it's 4 p.m. and the Tigers host the Raiders at Campbelltown Sports Stadium. The line is set at -4.5 against Canberra, and it remained that way after teams came out. Only one change for both teams. For the Tigers, they welcome back Lachlan Galvin, and for the Raiders, they have Tom Starling out, so Zach Woolford comes off the bench rather. Now, the Tigers have finally snapped their losing streak, but the job to build on that win streak and make it 2 in a row does become much harder this week against the Raiders, who did defeat them earlier this year in round 2, and you're confident they will do it again in this one.
I'm not highly confident when it's 2 teams that I've struggled to get them in the right weeks or go against them. And I can understand why some people might play the Tigers here after winning last week and you get back Galvin. Dewey is a chance to come back. Well, I think Benji said he'd be more likely to play 1 more week of Cup. But it comes back to the fact that the reasons why I really didn't like Wests a week ago are still all true. It's a grossly inexperienced team. I do think the scoreline flatters them because the Titans side did everything possible to firstly not put Wests away when Wests weren't in the game, and then to give Wests every conceivable opportunity to come back when Wests did kind of switch on and utilize that Leichhardt spirit and atmosphere as your Titans wilted in front of your very eyes. So would West have beaten anybody else in the comp last week? I'm not sure. You got a Raiders side that I want to take after they were ravaged at home because the DNA of this team and how Ricky's men will probably respond to that. A game where they were, although they scored a couple late, as we said in the recap, they were losing 36-6 type score, right? They're down 30 plus points late in the game, never really in it. This is a good opportunity for Canberra, who's a team that still believes they can make the finals and neither loses any pieces to Origin, which is something to be said for the contest, and it makes it a little bit extra enticing. Maybe not the right choice of word there for a Sunday Arvo footy game. Nobody's going to be that excited about Raiders Tigers, but I am. I think it can be a good one, and I think the Raiders bounce back. And I saw the line getting to 4.5, thinking that's a borderline play for me. And then when I could find 3.5 on Dabble, I said, yeah, behind this forward pack for Canberra, I think that we get the response, and I'll fade West off after so much pressure was on them. And what made the Tigers dangerous a week ago was backs against the wall and wanting to avoid a 10-match losing streak. Now you win, you do alleviate some of that pressure. Now that can actually manifest into some more positive footy, but it could also just mean that the intensity reduces and the desperation reduces now for the Tigers because they got that win. And I'm not certain they're going to be able to replicate that level of grit this weekend, should they fall behind again.
Do you remember when these two sides met last year at Campbelltown Stadium? It was supposed to be Jared Croker's 300th, but they rested him. I remember it's like that game, wasn't it like a crazy seesaw contest where Raiders were in front, then the Tigers shot back? I don't remember, but I remember it being a crazy
Yeah,
game.
from what I want to say, the Raiders were up 18-0.
Yeah.
And the line was Raiders -3.5. And I said on the show, this seems really fishy. This is a really low line for the Raiders. Like, there's nobody out there who's going to take Tigers +3.5. I don't get it. But I'm staying off because I can't explain why the line's this short. And then the Raiders were up 18-0. And I'm like, well, maybe I should have just taken the obvious play. Next thing you know, the Tigers put on 3 tries in 10, 15 minutes. It's 18 all. I believe the Tigers even hit the front 19-18 before the Raiders then got a controversial penalty and won 20-19. So they did win, though they did not cover. That's what my brain is telling me happened. So it was a pretty crazy game for sure.
I don't remember exactly what happened, but if it was anything like you described there, that's probably why I remember it being a wild roller coaster. Look, I have to go Raiders here, and I'm in a tough spot because everyone knows I'm a passionate Titans fan, and for me to criticize the Tigers last week, I'm gonna sound salty. It's gonna come off as salty, but believe me, I'm just calling it as I see it. We gave them that game on a silver platter, and I will go as far to say that every single other team in the competition beats the Tigers that day, but the Titans. And genuinely, I mean that, and I would back that with my own money. If there was a market, all 15 teams must beat the Tigers at Leichhardt with how they played. I would back it. So we move to just 1 week later. They do get Lachlan Galvin back, but I don't see any reason why I should adjust that thought pattern. I have to go the Raiders without too much thought. I just didn't think the Tigers were overly impressive. I thought they did enough against a Titans side that absolutely shot themselves in the foot with every opportunity, only completing 9 sets in the second half. Now for the Raiders, if they complete their sets well and they play some smart footy, they win. I really think it's that simple, and I'm sorry that will upset Tigers fans. I know it doesn't come off well with me being a Titans fan, but I'm just calling it how I see it. And the Tigers are only averaging 15 points per game this year. And the only sides they've scored more than that on recently is the Titans and the Cowboys. And I don't think either of us are looking at either of those sides as defensive sides in the last few weeks anyway, particularly the Cowboys. You know, they gave up a ton of tries late to this Raiders side that we're previewing now. Now, the last time the Tigers defeated the Raiders at Campbelltown was 2014. We go back 10 years there. The Raiders have also won their last 8 straight games in a row over the Tigers, and the Tigers have lost their last 10 straight at Campbelltown. I just have to tip Raiders at the line. I know you said the last time they played there was something fishy about the line. I don't think there's anything fishy about this line at all. I think Raiders win. I think they win well. To be a little bit conservative, I did take them head-to-head in the Clarkies Collect just to be safe there. Which brings us to the point
back, I pretty much did outline exactly what happened in that game pretty well. What did I say? That the Tigers scored 3 quick tries in 15 minutes. They scored 3 tries in 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
West to make it from 18-0 to be 18-all, and eventually did take a 19-18 lead. But look, I'm looking at that West side, right, that nearly beat the Raiders a year ago. Okay, Buller was the fullback. The whole back line is different. The halves were Wakeham and Brooks. Yuto Kamano's there. Is Clemmer in the lineup? I mean, Papali, Bateman, they're both injured. Right? Bolle, Coruscant played off the bench that day. Safer. That's it. So there's only about 4 or 5 players that were in that game last year, which just goes to show how much turnover there's been for West and the experienced players that are currently sidelined. And that's ultimately what it all boils into me playing Canberra. And it could be slightly logical, but at least I feel like we'll take them after they got embarrassed last week, where others might be hesitant. Like some people backed Canberra last Friday night and they were horrendous, and those people won't go near them again this week. And some people might have been burned by going against West last weekend or took West and will roll the dice with them again. So at least I'm kind of playing the seesaw here, which has been fairly typical of these inconsistent teams.
Yep, definitely. And we said last week, we're always looking for spots where the Raiders can respond this year under Ricky Stewart. Bad loss at home where they were favourites against the Cowboys, going to a venue where they won last time, a team that they've won their last 8 in a row over. This is a chance for them to respond. So to recap my Clarkies collect in order of the round, I'm going the Warriors head-to-head, the Bulldogs plus 9.5 into the Raiders head-to-head. That pays around $4.40. When we'll get the exact price of that after the show when we put it in our trackers. And Winnie, what were your best bets for those that might have joined us late?
I'll put it back up on the screen. So I just was interested in Zed's comment there too. He said these sides, Wests and Canberra, met at Campbelltown in 2022. And I remember that game as well. I want to say it was the final game of the season. And the Raiders were in a position where they thought they might need to win to make the finals. But I believe the result the previous day was like Brisbane losing. And the Raiders didn't even need to win. So it was like a dead rubber game for the Raiders. And then they came out and they were up 40-0 anyway before the finals when they didn't even need it. So that just goes to show how dismal Canberra was on that day. I'd take a result like that this weekend, that's for sure. But my 4 best bets are, in fact, Finns plus 6.5 at 191, Warriors minus 5.5 at $1.90, Souths minus 4.5 at $1.81, and Raiders minus 3.5 at $1.82.
Absolutely perfect, mate. Well, thank you very much to yourself, and thank you very much to our viewers that were with us here tonight for our preview pod. As always, we will see you Sunday within 15 minutes of the final game. Thanks again for spending your Tuesday afternoon/night with us, guys, and over to you when you to farewell the show and hit us with those famous last words.
Yeah, look out for the mixed matchup under Toppy's rugby league markets, or I'll post it in the group as well tomorrow. My SGMs for the weekend, of course, will come. We got a sniff for that 25-1 last week with better. We'll see how we go, and I'll be in the kitchen, of course. And the NBA season concluded today, which is a bittersweet that there's no more hoops. But on a positive note, again, I did actually tip the Boston Celtics in our season preview, doubled down on them in the playoffs preview, and that got home today pretty comfortably in the finals. That was a 550 pick on the back of I had a couple of division winners at 11s and 7s. So it was a strong NBA season for me. I don't know if I should consider switching my main sport at this point, but I still have belief. I wouldn't share my best bets if I didn't. I've given you guys the reasons why, so you can take them or leave them, but always let me know. Always love to discuss it. Have a great week, guys. We'll be back Sunday to recap the shortened round 16, and then Monday to preview Origin 2. So can't wait to chop it up about Origin again with you, Clarky, but we got some interesting footy games before that. Have a good one, guys. Lego.